And we're live. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, probably good evening as well. So, we had a little break, summer break, and now we're back with you. So, how was your summer? In some cases, winter, I suppose, but let us know in the comments. So, today we're going to talk about retail trajectories with retail strategist and president of Spieckerman Retail, Carol Spieckerman. Carol, it's very nice to have you with me and welcome, and please introduce yourself.
You bet. It's great to be here with you, Eve. I'm president of Spieckerman Retail, and my business is helping a really diverse group of retail stakeholders accelerate their B2B business development in the retail space, and also to bring retail thought leadership into their organizations. And I speak around the world on my retail trajectories, and these are themes that I'm constantly creating, connecting, and mapping across all kinds of categories, business models, and touch points. My trajectories really just create a common language that ties together all those seemingly random things that are happening in retail and brings them into clear calls to action for all those diverse folks that now play a role in retail. And I'm looking forward to maybe sharing a few of them with you today in our conversation.
Before we go into those, I always ask the question, what is your favorite coffee?
Well, the brand probably wouldn't matter because I'm not like a coffee snob, but I like just a really nice medium roast. And this time of year, maybe with a little spice, like some
Yeah,
cinnamon, pumpkin, something like that.
some chili as well. So you mentioned your retail trajectories. Is there some particular trajectory that is rising on the top or maybe has emerged as the real game changer?
Well, if I had to identify at any given time, I'm tracking like 40 or 50 trajectories. But if I had to identify sort of a power trajectory, it would be buy, build, or bridge, because retailers are continually having to evaluate whether it makes more sense to make an acquisition, whether it makes more sense to build solutions internally, or whether they should be relying on those outside partnerships in order to future-proof their business. And it really is a game-changing trajectory because it impacts these decisions that retailers are making, impact anybody who works with retailers, and it really is a question that's keeping them up at night. They're like, God, what should we do? We've got all these options, and they have to make such quick decisions. So the interesting part is the most successful retailers right now are buying, building, and bridging simultaneously. They're doing all three. And a big change, though, a big shift that I've been tracking is this acceleration in bridge building or partnerships, retailers forging partnerships with outside companies, again, to future-proof their business. And it makes a lot of sense because they've realized finally that they can't do everything themselves, nor do they want to. And also, it's just a more agile and cost-effective way of doing business to just, sometimes dart in and out of these partnerships. But this is really great news for all kinds of solution providers and suppliers, folks that work with retailers, because this newfound receptivity to partnerships is just opening up a world of opportunity. And I can tell you that's certainly been true for my clients.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the downside or potential downside of these partnerships? And do you have any thoughts on the best practices?
Well, there can be a downside, and I would have to put the downside on the retailer, put the burden on the retailer, because what I've seen is that in some cases retailers are not taking full advantage of these partnerships, and sometimes they cherry pick them, or they deconstruct the solutions, even though some of those solutions are meant to work together as a whole across the enterprise. That also creates another pitfall where sometimes retailers bring these solutions on board and then they push them off in one functional area, whereas it would maybe benefit from having cross-functional input and cross-functional collaboration. Also, too, retailers can get stuck in this very expense-oriented mindset to where they don't realize that they can, monetize their platforms. And one of the ways they can do that is through these partnerships. So everything isn't always an expense. In some cases, it can be kind of a side hustle, as a lot of retailers are realizing. And then finally, too, I think it's important when you're forging these partnerships to always be thinking ahead to the future and not just, the here and now. So that's a pretty tall order. That's a pretty long checklist in terms of that best practices. But I think it just all rolls up to one big best practice, which is if you're going to bring in a partnership, if you've already made that decision, then by all means, make the most of it. And also tap into the intellectual capital that comes with those partnerships, not necessarily just the solution.
I totally agree. I want to bring some of the examples from our world, from the security part of these partnerships.
Yeah.
And the example I think it stand out for me is when the marketing department normally goes and looks for the solutions, for example, business intelligence, like people counting, or operations need the people counting now for situations with COVID, how many people we have inside of the retail store, for example. And then we have a solution which is already in the store. It's installed. It's a security system. It has cameras. It actually sees people. So to add video analytics on top, like people count or queue management or heat map or identification of any other business intelligence analytics which is in mind, is really a matter of adding one or two software licenses. And sometimes it hurts to see that there's two independent systems with video cameras, one just for people counting, and next to it is a security camera. This is not leveraging those partnerships. This is not using, like you said, this cross-organizational collaboration, the operations, the marketing, the security. Right now, we see more and more sitting at one table, but we are not exactly there. And hopefully that is going to change with time. But
I think we already see it changing, though. That's the good news, Eve, because retailers have been much later than I thought they would be on this, but they are starting to break down silos and really make that a top priority corporately. And fingers crossed for folks like you in the solutions business, I think that's going to eventually trickle down and just become a mandate. So I think retailers are kind of getting it, that that's the only way they can really be successful. But again, that really relies on also trusting partners like you guys to already know how this looks and know how it works best and how to tie it all together.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And now, actually, just to add on that topic, with this IT move during COVID and remote monitoring, it's an amazing push where IT is not a separate function from loss prevention and security anymore. It's just emerging so much. And I was participating in the latest webinar working group between retailers. And we had a survey result who has remote monitoring. And the one which was done in 2016 showed only 13% of retailers were able to monitor their premises remotely. Right now, it's 83%. So, and we see the push with COVID. I think it's pretty much straightforward that you need connectivity, you need centralization, and you need that ownership. And with ownership comes this cross-organizational collaboration with IT, with marketing, with operations, with all the departments of the business. So that kind of lead me to the next question. And we do live in this era of continuous improvement and change at the moment, and automation. So what do you see as the latest breakthrough technology? Do you see any specific right now?
Wow, there's so many, right? It seems like every week, we're seeing just multiple stories about technologies that either existed outside of retail and are being brought into retail, or, they're unique to retail. But I caution companies all the time, and actually when I speak to folks in the media, to define any single technology as a universal breakthrough, because different retailers have different priorities, they're taking different actions, they're implementing different technologies, so you can't really say it's a one-size-fits-all situation. But I do think one thing we can agree on that's universal is that this conversation around people versus technology, or high tech versus high touch, is going to continue. And I think it's going to continue to be kind of a heated debate, but that also involves consumers. So when you look at automated technologies like self-checkout, for example, and this is great for retailers. Retailers recently are really jumping on to self-checkout because not only the long-term potential for cost savings, but now when you talk about these massive labor shortages that everybody's so concerned about, yeah, technology can replace people in some cases and mitigate that problem. But what's interesting is consumers fall on a spectrum on these types of solutions. Some consumers won't use self-checkout because they think they are literally being part of a problem rather than a solution, that they're forcing people out of the labor force. I've actually read studies where uh, they will avoid self-checkout for that one reason. But on the other hand, you've got plenty of consumers that love automation and they love self-checkout, not only because it's convenient, but also because it's safe. You know, during COVID, they feel like it's a safer way to do business. So all of this just to say that that's one example of many where, regardless of the technology, it's about getting the mix right, and it's about offering options to consumers. You know, retailers would love to narrow everything down and say, hey, here's what we're all going to do, and we're going to narrow it down to these few options that are more profitable for us or help our business run more efficiently. But now retailers get it that they've got to be in the business of providing choice, and that means choices of technologies, and it also means not lurching ahead too quickly and eliminating maybe some things that they may think are old school, but that consumers still very much want, and those options that they want to have.
I totally agree. But also with this new trend to frictionless, the frictionless experience, we often say, brings frictionless theft as well. So it's a
Yeah.
new challenge for retailer to bring this new technology. So the solutions which retailer chooses should give space for new technology to come in. So you always need to think about the future proof. And this is where normally a choice of an open system or flexible system which allow the new technologies to come in and just to grow with you as you grow with new challenges. It's very crucial, right? So that's what we see. And right now with there's new challenges, we see a lot of startups which develop specific analytics which can help with that. Also with self-checkouts, we see them coming up, at least like 10 different vendors I've personally met specifically for self-checkout. So we need to always keep an eye on new and how to make sure that we allow system to grow with your needs.
So, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it's not just about choosing the technology; it's also about looking at how it integrates with what you already have, and also, again, we keep talking about this future proofing, looking ahead to the next stages of that technology, rather than just thinking in the here and now.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you think? What are things going from here? So, what retailers should be paying attention to?
Well, yeah, I'll throw in another trajectory here. That's actually one of my latest ones, which is from possibilities to priorities. Because for years, retailers have been focused so much on, where can I get these capabilities, and which, again, going back to buying, building, and bridging, how can I even just have the ability to do these certain things? Well, now, again, thanks to all of those options that they have, retailers are basically spoiled for choice. So the shift in focus needs to happen now to think about priorities and setting priorities and hierarchies rather than just thinking about possibilities. And I think we're already seeing that right now. But the interesting part is, once again, retail organizations are so unique right now, not only in their organizational structures, but also in their approaches and priorities. So they really are going to be setting different priorities. So it's not like there's a template out there that everybody should be following. So I think that's a very big takeaway for now, is to start thinking in terms of those priorities. And also, it's very important to acknowledge that your priorities can and should be very different from your competitors. And I think that's, again, where some of these partnerships can come in, where you're working with outside companies that have that big picture perspective, and they can help you set those priorities and tell you what those phased approaches can be.
Yeah, and this actually beautifully sums up our conversation today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for joining me. So, for all the listeners, I will ask you to check out Carol's website for more talks with her. We will put the links in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want some more interviews and some more discussions about different technologies. So, well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Carol, for joining me, and I
Bye-bye.
wish everyone a wonderful day. So, thank you, everyone, and goodbye.